Welcome to the GenAI podcast, where the future meets fun and tech talk trends. Get ready to dive into the world of artificial intelligence like never before. Your hosts, Dale, Alan, Greg, and Val, are about to take you on a wild ride through the AI universe. So, buckle up, tune in, and let the AI adventure begin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 27 of the GenAI podcast.
Hello.
We've had a couple of weeks of hiatus, I think, but we are live once again at an amazing conference. CASA, as they've rebranded, we were the ACOST E. Now they're Controls and Skills Authority. But we're here during lunch. You've had your lunch.
It's an upgrade from an association to an authority, right?
Absolutely. And we have a semi-live audience behind the camera, if you can't see, which is great. We've got skateboards in the background. We're a great view looking out the window, but when we did the other angle, we just looked like silhouettes. It was too bright.
I guess we can post a picture somewhere down here.
But we talk about the venue all day, but I guess this is the GenAI podcast. Also, we probably should talk about a little bit about AI and what it means. And it's quite apt that we had a project controls conference and what it means in terms of project controls. However, we also like to bring some news to
all of the things,
and education and entertainment as well.
Yeah.
Have you seen Val, first of?
No.
Okay.
I have read Val posting things on LinkedIn, which has been super interesting.
It could have been a bot.
Could have been a bot.
Yeah.
It's very easy to do. So
I just wonder.
We still have no proof that Val's a human.
No, we don't.
I mean, there's some proof because you've met him in person and you do the other podcasts.
Yes. And we send our love to Greg, who couldn't make it here. He would have wanted to be here, but hi, Greg. One of the things that I think is worth chatting about that I've seen lately is MCP, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What is MCP?
So MCP is a protocol definition, effectively. It's called the Model Context Protocol, introduced by Anthropic, actually like a couple of months ago.
Mm-hmm.
But people are slowly starting to take that up. The idea is you have an agent, you need the agent to do things. It is a lot easier if there is a standard interface for doing stuff with agents.
Yeah.
So the client sits on the agent side. Yeah. It goes and discovers whatever MCP servers you tell it about. So you may have an MCP server for, it doesn't exist, but you may have one for Procore, right? With projects. You may have one for your SharePoint. You may have one for, I don't know, maybe some robots that build stuff. But the idea is through this protocol, the agent goes and discovers what can it do through this interface.
Yes.
Adds it into its own planning.
Yep.
So that then it can call the tools as it plans to do stuff. So effectively, you're extending the capability of an agent by giving it new tools through a standardized protocol. And
providing it, as the name suggests, a context.
Yeah. So like the part of the MCP protocol is you give context to the agent so it knows what to do.
Okay.
What it can do.
But that's quite helpful, right? Because everyone's quite familiar with ChatGPT, which is very general. And I think people are beginning to familiarize themselves with what AI agents are and agentic AI capabilities. This is sort of, I guess, the next evolution in that space and allowing us to be far more specific about what we're looking at.
There's already a next step, which is A2A. So Google Next, I was there, I don't know, a month ago?
Yeah.
Just under a month ago. So A2A is an agent-to-agent protocol.
Okay.
Same philosophy, different endpoints, right? Yeah. So Model Context Protocol is like you have one agent that's talking to usually a software tool, but doesn't have to be, right? There'll be some other thing on the other side, and that other thing is not agentic.
Okay.
You just
operate
it, right? So like you're effectively giving it a standard set of levers, or a standardized set of levers, and then you label what they are. Agent to agent is two agents, completely independent of each other, talk to each other, figure out what they can do together, plan stuff.
Okay. So this is, we kind of spoke about this probably last year, a couple of episodes ago, where we were sort of futurescaping, where you have agents talking to each other. You have maybe a planner agent, a project controls agent, a cost management agent, and they basically interact as a team. And it feels like that's the space we're heading towards, although what we know today, there's still a bit of an adoption barrier. In the last episode, I spoke to Greg, where he sees that changing. He sees there is a change in attitude towards using AI and technology in general. But I still think there's a bit of education around on how do we use agents or agentic AI. Are there use cases starting to emerge? Is there real life examples of where this is done in practice? And I think, that's the space that a lot of organizations are in, is where's the evidence?
Yeah, I think you're right. There's I think the barrier for agents is the UX. So right now, I mean, there's also a lot of confusion between agents, workflows, just assistants, or large language models, and I think you can build a scale around that and some ontology of sorts. But the reality is that the barrier right now to adoption is the UX. So the goal for agents is to go where the workflows, where the jobs are already happening, right? So a good example for us, like, that we have Barry as our agent for doing lots of things with Mplant's product suite. But one of the things that we do internally is that Barry joins our customer success calls and it joins our account management calls.
Yeah.
And then it connects all the dots and actually does some of the lifting for our customer success team.
Okay.
And so the idea is that you put it in to places where things already exist.
Yep.
And you teach an agent what to do and how, and then it does those things.
Is it, because we've previously spoken, is it self-learning or self-teaching? Or do you still have to give it inputs to teach it so that it gives it that context? Where are we with that space?
You could build it both ways.
Okay.
A self-learning, self-discovering agent is way more complex than one that's rigid and fixed about what it can do.
Yeah.
A2A, I think, and MCP go much further on this journey of generalized agents that can learn to do special things based on the context that you give them and the tools that you hand out.
Right? And for those that aren't familiar, if you're talking about a digital environment, let's call it that, well, there's a couple of things, right? One, in terms of security, and two, I know you famously spoke about the death of SaaS a couple of episodes back.
Claim to fame. I said it 6 months before Satya Nadella.
There we go. He follows you, right?
Yeah. He does. And follows me around, not on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. So how do you see companies adopting and using this technology? Does it have to be within their ecosystem, their environment? Would it sort of call to a server sitting somewhere remotely? What's the best way to implement this, these AI agents, whether it's A2A or MCP, particularly if there are those that are following along with the technology going, actually, we need to adopt this now and we need to use it to improve the way we are delivering projects. Again, word of caution, I'm not advocating, maybe you are, we can debate this, that it replaces jobs. What it does is, at the current state of it, for me, it helps automate a lot of what we're doing. It helps in terms of the productivity, the mundane things that we do. It really speeds that up, but also provides us additional context far faster than we would individually go out and try and research it. So just summing that up, but bringing back to the question, where do you think companies should start and how should they think about this digital landscape?
So you said something interesting to me earlier, which is, it is hard to keep up.
It is hard to keep up.
Right? And you've got your own version of an assistant.
Yep.
How do you feel about keeping that up to date?
It's tough. It's tough, right? Because the speed at which technology is going now is not, 6 months, 3 months, monthly. It's actually daily. Every day you look and there's a new evolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really, really tough to keep up. And I think for me, it's starting with making it accessible at the basic level. And if you can understand the basics and what you can do, I think this is, we've spoken before with Greg around sort of how the adoption curve happens, right?
Yeah.
Sort of, do you have, early adopters versus late adopters? Where are you on that? All that kind of a thing. We know, I think, that the project profession is particularly late at adopting technology in general statement.
No comment.
But we've spoken as well as the industry moves on and gets more familiar with the technology, that is lowering and we're picking it up. So in terms of keeping up, I think here's the thing. Although it's moving at such a fast pace, it's not too late to learn about this stuff.
Oh, it's never too late. Yeah. It's never too late.
So you can still pick it up. You haven't missed the boat, so to speak. That's my opinion on it.
There is, I think this notion of having missed the boat is such a misconception, right? Like you could be, I don't know if there is anyone that is in this situation, but you could be someone who has never heard of the internet, right? And you still haven't missed the boat. There's just a different shape of boat that you get on than the one that you would have got on in 1994. Right? But like, the reason why I asked that question is my follow-up to it's hard to keep up is what is the probability of you, me, I mean, like not like personally, but also like Mova, M-Plan, I'm going to speak for Greg, but Nodes and Links and like tier 1 contractors, owners, to keep up with organizations that's what they do. They spend tens of billions a year on that and have access to the best people in the world to do that, right? And the answer is you're probably in like 0.0000001% probability of being able to keep up with that pace. So what I'm trying to get to is my advice, which I have in a slide that I've shown in quite a few talks, and you've seen it. Don't build your own. Don't build your own. Why? Because you're going to take a snapshot in time of what's available today, and you're not going to be able to keep up with what happens in the next 6 months, right? So, and even for us, like M-Plan, we struggle to keep up with the pace a lot of the time, especially on the agent side, right? So what's the better thing that you can do, right? Like Claude has an MCP client built in, for example. Build yourself an MCP server, give Claude access to that. Then all of a sudden, and like, I use Gemini and A2A, whatever, right? But like, I'm using that as an example, and I want to be provider agnostic as much as possible, but also like OpenAI is going to implement MCP as well. So you're not limited to Claude. That way you ensure that the really expensive bit to develop, you still always have access to the best version. And the special thing that you have is always accessible by that thing, right? So then you're combining both of the best, right? Because like, why would you go and fine tune a model? Well, because they don't have access to that data. So then like, how do you make that possible?
Can I add to the keeping up bit? Because I'll remind you, we had this conversation a year ago on our sister podcast, Project Chatter, or over a year ago even. And
oh gosh, you're gonna bring up something that I said, but I don't even remember.
No, you will remember this. I think you read it. You said you read it. I think that you don't when you have, if you're driving a bus around town, you don't just drive the bus around town and hope people jump on the bus. You go to the stop where they're at and allow them to get on and give them a choice to get on or not. And I think there's the pace of change in technology and AI that's happening globally and at scale and in the world, but then there's the pace of change at which project organizations are evolving. And so which stop are they at? And so one, yes, is keeping up with what's happening, developments out there, but also where are organizations in their maturity journey? Where are individuals in their maturity journey? And can you help them get up to speed as quickly as possible? I guess this is part of the GenAI podcast of why we do what we do, is to help educate, share opinions, and the like. And, so that's my view. There's two rates at which you've got to try and keep up with.
Okay, here's an idea. Why don't we make a little jingle for Radical Truth Moment?
Okay.
Or Radical Candor Moment. Because...
Is this what's coming?
Yes.
Drum roll.
Well, we can make up a jingle and we'll add it afterwards. Space for the jingle. If you look at organizational change, I'm going to speak generally for a second. It is the slowest thing to happen. That is why constantly for the last 50 years, startups have disrupted incumbents. Right?
Yep.
So, and by the way, I mean startups in the strictest sense, right? It's like Google is not a startup. It hasn't been for at least 20 years. But if you look at even Google, right? Transformers came out of Google.
Yep.
They had all the models already. And all of a sudden, what up until that point was an open research lab had a serendipitous moment and put everybody at Google on the back foot into panic emergency mode. And Microsoft then took the financial, just park money behind them kind of view and ride the bus with them rather than compete with them. But again, like that's going to happen everywhere anyway. That's like irrelevant of AI or whatever the next thing is after AI, if there ever is something else afterwards. But, in projects, I'm pretty sure we're going to see, like you can say consultants, contractors that don't exist today or are very small today that are going to show up and break everybody else's business model.
So this is more a when than an if.
Yeah, scenario. I'm relatively sure of it.
Okay. One of the things is, I think, and we do have a audience, and we'll get some questions from the audience in a minute, which is great. We're getting some gestures, kind ones, I think, in the background, some hand gestures. And it's interesting because in truth, we don't know where this is going to go and we don't know who it's going to be, but we know there will be disruption. And it might be by stealth. It might not. As you say, you look around, you look at Kodak. Kodak's famous, right? For just making the wrong decisions. Yeah.
But that is, Kodak, IBM, all of them, right? Like Google's losing an enormous amount of market share on search, which is their core thing, which then drives the ad revenue, right?
Yes.
And the thing that I'm sure Google are terrified of is that OpenAI has started hiring the people that built out a lot of the ad networks.
Yep.
So you can kind of infer what's coming from there. But I guess like my more general point is that organizational change is always orders of magnitude slower than innovation from the ground up.
Yeah.
And I will give you a better example. I was chatting to someone, shall not be named, who was at a contractor, had an idea for innovation, couldn't get any traction, left, started the company. Right? And that's why, right? Because like you cannot get a 500,000 ton ship to turn fast enough. So then you jump off that ship, get on a speedboat.
So let's talk about...
and move away from the iceberg.
Let's pull that thread a little bit, the jumping ship one and starting up, because I was going to go elsewhere, but as you know, we can go all over the show. I actually think that AI, agentic AI, AI agents, MCP A2A, all of this technology is enabling the transition to the gig economy, right? Because we spoke about the gig economy, that something's going to happen, but you hear more and more and see more and more of individuals going out and taking that leap of faith going, I think I can do this. Now, to your point, not everyone can be a successful solopreneur. However, what this does is it actually removes the barrier to innovation because people are trying things, right?
It removes the barrier to innovation and introduces multipliers to scaling fast. You have, I think, I've mentioned this a couple of times, but like this idea of like having the one person company, right? Like this is like famous, like this dinner that I talk about so many times with my research director about like, we had this moment where like, oh, the world is really going to change quite soon, where one person companies might actually become the norm. And you think about it, like the idea of a company which is like more 400 or 500 years old, right? It's not been the whole of humanity's existence. Before that, what did we do? Like, you had like the blacksmith, and they were all like solopreneurs in a sense, right? Like everybody had their own trade, everybody had their own thing that they did, and they were a one-person company, right? Because like companies didn't exist, so it was maybe a different reason, but we're probably like going to converge back to that a lot.
Yes.
And I guess like, is there enough demand for everybody to have a one-person company? Who knows? But actually, I think legal frameworks don't allow for this. But you can also have effectively zero-person companies.
I know you said this before as well.
And like that's the one that I think is interesting. And I think Sam Altman has been talking about this a lot as well. But like the zero-person company, which like, sure, it's illegal for now. From a legal entity perspective, you have to have one shareholder at least, right?
Yep.
So you show up, you set up a company, you set up a little network of agents, whatever it is, however you want to do it, whatever the purpose of the company is, give them a couple of prompts, set them off. Walk away. That company builds itself. And in fact, you can even set up an agent that builds zero-person companies, but then it gets a little bit meta. That company builds itself. What does that mean from a societal perspective? And I actually think, and this is where I agree with Sam Altman. I don't agree with him on many things, but this one I do, which is the zero-person company should be owned by a government. So like if you build a zero-person company, that should have 100% tax on profits, and then that funds universal basic income. So there is a world where, we talk about this utopia, and this is a thing that's been around since the 40s or 50s, right? Where like, there's going to be so much innovation in the future that you'll only do an hour of work a week. How's that gone, by the way, right? Like we all work way more than 40 hours, and 40 hours was an exception already back then because it was too much. And now we're talking about 60, 80-hour weeks. And like, what if we actually had a system to support that? So like, I'm actually like a really big fan of this idea.
So AI is dragging us into communism?
I mean, I think it's more like, it's less than communism. It's more like a form of like new type of social care.
Yeah, I'd take your point. I'm being a little bit facetious there.
No, but like...
Yeah. The other one that I want to pull a thread on, which you mentioned, sort of Google ads and things like that. Yash, shout out to Yash Desai. He posted just recently, he was thinking about how, we're moving away from the Google search and ad revenues and things like that, and how that would impact searches and AI agents all impacting and talking to each other, etc.
Yeah.
On the last episode, I spoke to Greg about this. I said, wouldn't it be amazing if we do have a social and mental health challenge at the moment that I don't think is given, well, we speak about a lot, but I don't think there's enough remedies where people don't know truly how to interact with each other in many instances. And we're spending so much time on screens and consuming social media. But if you get to a place where you have potentially your AI agent, personal one, and my AI agent, right, interacting with each other, maybe exactly.
Like Val. That's going to be the...
Or interacting with sort of this digital world, but then only giving us the necessary information. Would that actually inadvertently allow us less screen time because we're only getting the right information at the right time that we need, and then there won't be any ad revenues potentially? But then I don't know.
You can go a little bit Black Mirror-y on this, right? So like,
that's where both Greg went with the conversation as well as Yash on his post. So
yeah, you can go a little bit Black Mirror-y on it, right? So like, if you think about the fact that the open internet is losing traffic, right? What does it mean when you're looking for something and the answer comes from a platform that has some internal memory, so it knows what the internet was like in whatever the last training cutoff date is, right? But then, first of all, like, you start missing new information and changes, right? Which is why deep research goes onto the open internet, for example. But you also miss the traffic that then goes onto it, right? So like there's this big decline in traffic to the websites that actually hold the information, which then creates a disincentive for people to actually make those, right? So if that supply of information is not kept up to date anymore, and we're not producing that anymore, we end up in like some form of like self-fulfilling paradoxical state of information stasis in the virtual world that no longer matches up with the real world. So and then you can manipulate that by putting ads in.
Okay.
Right? So then all of a sudden you Google what is the best consulting company on the planet, and somehow either you've paid for an advert or you've managed to manipulate the search and crawl that OpenAI does, and ChatGPT says, obviously Mobile, right? So that would be worth billions of dollars to you, I imagine. So like maybe you should think about doing it, but
maybe this is a good debate topic because listeners love if there's a bit of a debate and discourse. So if we take,
so you're not going to do it?
Well, maybe not. Do we have the money? So if you take what you just said in the context of projects, right? And we had AI agents doing most of the grunt work on projects, right? Do we then stifle innovation because we don't have humans interacting?
I mean, I need to be nice about this, but like, when have you seen humans innovate fast? And I think what you might risk, and this is like separate from agents, right? Because we were talking about the open internet, and like agents actually have the incentive to go and get things.
Yep.
Right? Whereas the perplexity / ChatGPT problem is that people no longer go to the thing.
Yeah.
Right? So sure, like you have this, you could, the risk actually in that case is that you might be ivory towering the people, right? So you put agents everywhere.
Yep.
And there's like one person in the little like brain space pulling the levers and sending the agents off and coming back. Then that is an ivory tower of sense, right? So like the real dependency then is the quality of the agent to keep people connected to what's happening. But, you know, if you're in projects and if you're in a construction project, then it is always one of the best things that you can do is go do a walk around, right? And we have this, like, the difference is that because it's in the physical space, then that will always be connected to humans. So, and I'm not saying that that's an exception, right? But the risk is different.
Yep.
And the risk is, I guess it's like, you could abstract it up where the risk is buffering. Right? So we're buffering the humans on the internet with the models. We're buffering the humans on the projects with the agents. And this is not necessarily about projects either, right? It can be everywhere. So how do you make sure that those buffers are not creating distortions? Right?
Yes.
And like, this is where like you can probably be more confident that the agents that you have employed to do things for you aren't littered with advertising.
And doesn't count.
Unless you want to pay us a lot to put, yeah, like sure.
Incorrectly.
Like the strawberry, like don't get me started on that. But like, you know, unless you want to pay us a lot to put advertising for mobile in our agents, but like, if you are buying it as a service, right? So like, if you're the customer, if you're paying, you're the customer. If you're not paying, you are not the customer.
Yep.
Right? So
you're the commodity.
Exactly, right? And I think that's true also in search. It's true like in a lot of different things, right? But like the fact that you would be paying for an agent gives you some sort of like moral guarantee, but I call it like a certain degree of certainty that it's not going to be littered with advertising like, oh, you should buy this concrete from this place.
Yep.
Right?
So here's a pricing model challenge to a software company founder.
Yeah.
Why don't you just make N-Plan free for everyone all over the world and then sell basically ads?
Yeah, we could. Because
then everyone's using your product.
We could. Yeah. I think there are moral implications about that, right? So and this is where it gets thorny a lot, right? So OpenAI putting adverts in, obviously because they need to at some point reach a sustainable P&L rather than just keep raising money at stupid valuations. Do they have ads in
the free version? I don't know.
No, not right now, right?
But you're thinking they will?
Well, if you look at just who they've hired, right? They've hired people that have built ad networks.
Yeah.
And that was their job for 10 years. Can't remember the names, but they were very high.
But then
the
if I'm
person
on
that
the free
built
one,
the ad network for Meta is now OpenAI.
But then if I'm on that free one, why not just go and use an open source large language model rather than using ChatGPT free, who's going to just litter me with ads?
Well, why don't you use Hugging Face Chat right now?
Well, we do.
Question back to you, right? But
not Hugging Face, but yeah, we've got an internal LLM that,
But then you had to build it. How are you going to keep that up?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
All these
then
questions.
You have if you build it, you're not going to keep up.
Yeah.
If you the reason why do people use OpenAI and Claude, the user interfaces, rather than go to, and there are loads of open source interfaces. Hugging Face Chat is equivalent, and you can pick what model you use, and it's all going through Hugging Face, and they charge you a penny for it. But and there's plenty like that. Poe was another example of that early on, but the reason is convenience, right? Why do people use Google search still? Things because it's convenient. That's the thing.
So can I pull on a thread just before we go to audience questions? One of the things that we focused a lot on in the tech space, if you look at N-Plan nodes and links, there are others out there as well, is particularly on schedule analytics, machine learning, all that type of thing, and everything around the schedule, because most of the market uses Primavera P6. It's got the XER files. It's got, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, there's been very little done in the cost and estimating space. Why is that? Is it too difficult? Do we not have the right data?
Okay. The reason why usually someone starts a startup that is tech-enabled in some way, right? So let's exclude for a moment, going to go into doing consulting and do my own thing, because then that is not disruption. But the reason why someone goes and disrupts is because they are unhappy with what's happening.
Okay.
Right? Maybe we should play the jingle again. But
drum roll.
Cost estimating, scheduling, planning, whatever you want to call it, are heavily gate-kept professions.
Okay.
And when a profession is gate-kept in that way, the people that are on the inside of the gate don't want to disrupt it.
Okay.
And I see this all over the place as an observation, right?
But
so I think that's why we don't see a lot there.
So if you came up, though, with a technology, let's call it that enabled organizations to be more profitable through the way they deliver projects, yes, and your argument will be, well, we can do that through the schedule because we can deliver faster, quicker, identify risks, etc.
Sure, whatever. I mean,
but if you can particularly take costs and allow forecasts to be more accurate in terms of spend, would we need to reference any other projects to forecast?
I mean, you may not to, right? How you do it is a little bit different, but the why is it not being disrupted as much, I think, is a position of comfort.
Yep.
Right? So if I can do something that I've been doing for 30 years the same exact way and have it never change and charge an enormous amount of money proportionally to the amount of effort that I'm putting in, because I'm basically operating from muscle memory, why wouldn't I do that? Right?
Yes.
So, and I don't want to sound too despondent about it, but it's a nice place to be. So why disrupt it, right? So the disruption will inevitably, generally speaking, in those types of situations, right? So like lawyers are a good example of this. Like the law is a good example of this, because lawyers charge an enormous amount of money for things that a lot of the time they just crank a handle for 5 minutes.
Yeah, they go and search for something that
200 hours, right? Like
yeah.
Most of a solicitor's work is based on templates,
yeah.
right? And then proofreading.
Yeah.
So, and like, sure, like you get a solicitor because they know what to do when something isn't good, right? And that's what you're really paying them for. But there isn't a single lawyer to date who has gone, I need to disrupt this. All the disruption in law is coming from people outside who said, this is right for disruption. And so law now is going through a lot of disruption because law is 100% text-based.
Yes.
So large language models are very good at doing this kind of stuff. And I have a few friends that are in this space, right? But that disruption has to come from outside. And I think that's what's going to happen in cost estimating as well.
And by similarity, then, does contract management, commercial management fall into similar buckets?
Yes, right? Contract manager is basically law. So it's going to be the same thing, right?
Okay.
Litigation, liquidated damages, forensic scheduling, all of it, right? Like it's all going to be disrupted from the outside, never from the inside. From the inside, what you're going to see is innovation to make the job a little bit easier, but without breaking the gatekeep.
Yeah, awesome. Look, let's make a little bit of space, 10 minutes or so, for audience questions. Mr. Ian Heptonstall has got his hand up in our massive audience we've got behind the camera.
Yeah, so at least 400 people. Well, there's millions of people. There's the whole of Manchester outside the window.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely.
They're all audience.
But for those that don't know Ian is amazing at what he does. Go check him out on LinkedIn. He's always got some fascinating thoughts as well, a real thought leader. You're not mic'd up though, Ian, so do you have
repeat the question.
Yeah, I'll repeat it.
Yeah, it's building on that potential for disruption versus the vested interests, your gatekeepers. Ways of making step change to major projects have been known for decades, if not a century or so. They're still not being done. What's different this time around?
Yeah, great question. So we've had ways of working on projects for decades, if not longer, and they're still not being followed. And
convention has.
Yep.
There are differences to convention that are potentially innovative improvements. And in small areas, they get done and used, but they don't spread like topsy. In part because the vested interests prevent them from doing so. But then they still moan about how inefficient business is and set off red herrings that are probably not what the problem is, but it keeps another load of people busy. And we go round in circles. So what's different this time?
I'm going to connect all the things that we've said. So I agree, 100% true. And what is going to be different this time? I keep in mind that I said, if it happens, that's what's going to happen, right? It'll be someone from the outside. But let's take that assumption. It will be someone from the outside, right? That connects perfectly with organizational change is slower than disruption.
Yep.
So someone will show up and say, hang on, there's a lot of money here. And I can just blitz the whole market now and take it all for myself. And it will be someone who is not inside the gatekeep thinking that's something I want to take.
Yep.
I don't know where, when, or how. Well, in a sense, this is how. Like this is why, right? And you can connect that also to the fact that now it's a lot easier to build a one-person company.
Yep.
So it might be a single individual saying, hang on, I can just start off a bunch of agents, structure them in this way, and go and take all of the cost estimating market. And like, I mean, I'm being hypothetical here. I'd be like, if that is going to happen, that's how it's going to happen, right? And you can connect the three things together. This is like kind of like the writing on the wall moment.
How do we make them stick? Because I can show you examples of innovators who took this smarter idea, made themselves money, took a market, but they were small. But we regressed to the norm because of the inertia behind the convention status quo. They could allow these little companies to become quite big, make a fortune, but then they'll move on, die. The next generation of managers, have not been inculcated. They find that weird, and then they take it back. It regresses to the norm. Sutton and Pfeffer wrote the knowing doing gap from research at the end of the last century.
Yeah,
and that was about even within companies. Very few companies apply what people in the companies know. The mean is well below. But within the company distribution, there's some fantastic practices, but it's not being spread. So that's a sort of organizational change, a behavioral issue, and better ways.
But this is and this is like,
and they stay small.
Okay, so like the question was, or like it wasn't exactly a question, but like an observation is that there are pockets where this is kind of happening and happens a little bit, but then there's a regression to the mean. Mm-hmm. And I think the difference, again, if this will happen, the way that will be different is that instead of selling to the person that's gatekeeping, you're actually selling to their client. So who buys cost estimating, right? If we're talking about cost estimating, instead of selling to them, you sell to their clients. And all of a sudden, you've got a proposition that's going to be faster, better, cheaper, whatever it is, right? And you make a no-brainer for them. And that's how you take that market permanently. Because then all of a sudden, the demand has dried up. So that might force some of them to innovate or get on the bus. Others, will start burning effigies and all the other things that happen, right? And God knows we get a lot of hate, even though we don't sell past the gatekeepers, but we still do. But the idea is, like, the thought here is that it's going to be sidestepping, right? So, like, do the law firms buy the automatic AI lawyer? They don't. Their clients will, right? And are right now. So I'm going to do a shout out because I actually love this company, and they came out of the same incubator, same cohort, same incubator as us and Nodes and Links, but same cohort as us. They're called GenAI, and they started by trying to sell to lawyers. Okay. And there was a moment where they went, no, this is not how it's going to go. And now you can just basically use GenAI to make your own contracts, review contracts, find the things that you would pay a lot.
GEN?
Yeah. Yeah, genie. As in like genie in the
bottle.
Lamp. In the lamp.
.AI.
Bottle. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if it's .ai, but you Google GenAI, it comes up.
GNIE.
But like they have now taken a lot of that space where if I want to set up, like even small stuff, I'd be like, if I want to write let's say that I'm letting a flat.
Yep.
And I want to write up an agreement and I'm letting you a flat and you say, I want it for this thing. And I can use a template, and those templates have been around for ages, but I can customize it now. So if I want to say that like my agreement is that every time Dale doesn't come to a podcast, or every time that Val doesn't come to a podcast, I increase your rent by 10%. You can get GenAI to put that in the rental contract. which is probably a good idea. But
so if it's not my rent, his rent.
Yeah, the stuff that you'd pay a lawyer for, right? Or a solicitor for.
Yes.
And the way that they're capturing the market is just basically sidestepping all of this.
Yep.
Right? And that's when then you have permanent traction.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
That's what I did. He didn't turn.
We're all in the same boat.
So thank you for the questions, Mr. Heptonstall.
Thank you.
So yeah, they're about to start the next session as well. Professor, Mr., Doctor. There's all sorts of titles.
All three are true in this case.
Probably, possibly, and realistically. But no, it's a fascinating space. Like I say, we love being at these conferences, particularly with the thought leaders and what is out there. There's many, and hopefully we're trying to sort of either convey some of those messages of what we're seeing, but also take a pulse check on where the market is and what's happening. I think there's a curiosity, as we said on the last one. There are still some barriers to adoption. It's getting there. I think it's slowly coming around. There are still challenges, no doubt. But I do think that as we progress and mature, there's all these topics to kind of think about it. I think for many, when I boil it down to try and sort of add my spin or thoughts to Ian's question, is what's sort of hindering the adoption or not allowing it to stick. I think if I could boil it maybe down to three things. For me, it's leadership. Are the right leaders in place, not just now, but for the future, to enable adoption, to encourage adoption, to inspire and motivate the use of technology out there. Two, are there the right incentives for leaders to use technology just at large, not just AI, because there's more technology than just AI. And I think three, it's on an individual level as well. Are people just content with doing what they're doing, getting their paycheck and going home? Or do they actually want to change things and, really go out there and go, you know what? There's some really cool things I can do. That 8 hours I spend or 7.5 hours I spend working or working from home, can I actually be doing something cool rather than just be filling out a spreadsheet or just be doing the same thing day in, day out, or just reading emails?
Emails need to end.
Absolutely. So I think challenge yourself first and foremost if you're listening to this on an individual level. If you're a leader, challenge yourself in terms of what are you leading, what's going on, and how do you incentivize people on individual levels? How do you use technology to hit your targets? Use that as an internal incentive. And then I guess for companies, like ourselves, how do we create those incentives as well for people to adopt technology? But yeah, we've gone time. We know a large part of the audience has gone into the various breakout rooms for the various streams. Hopefully the background noise cancelled out a lot of the noise as we had the lunch break there. But again, if you are interested in being part of the podcast as well, in terms of getting your questions aired, hit us up, send us questions on our LinkedIn page. Heckles as well. Tell us we're talking nonsense.
Hate mail. We'll take it.
We'll take any love and disrespect in equal measure. But for now, thanks for listening. We'll catch up with you on the next one.
Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye.